1. Island Escape. Sophie Taylor leaned back in her seat, gazing out of the small airplane window at the endless expanse of turquoise water below. The tropical island of St. Lucia, with its lush greenery and pristine beaches, was just coming into view. She could already feel the stress of her life back in New York City melting away. This vacation was long overdue, and she was determined to make the most of every moment. The plane touched down smoothly, and Sophie was one of the first passengers to disembark. The warm, humid air enveloped her as she stepped onto the tarmac, and she took a deep breath, savoring the salty tang of the ocean breeze. She collected her luggage and made her way to the taxi stand, where a cheerful driver loaded her bags into the trunk. "Welcome to St. Lucia, miss," he said with a wide smile. "First time here?" "Yes, and I can't wait to explore," Sophie replied, returning his smile. The drive to the resort was a scenic one, winding through lush rainforests and along the stunning coastline. Sophie marveled at the vibrant flowers and the towering palm trees that lined the road. As they pulled up to the resort, she was greeted by the sight of a sprawling complex of whitewashed buildings, nestled against a backdrop of verdant hills. "Here we are, Coconut Bay Resort," the driver announced, helping her with her bags. Sophie checked in and was soon shown to her room, a spacious suite with a balcony overlooking the ocean. She spent a few moments unpacking, then changed into a swimsuit and a light cover-up. The beach was calling her name, and she wasn't about to resist its siren song. As she walked along the sandy path to the beach, Sophie felt a sense of exhilaration. She had taken this trip on a whim, needing to escape the pressures of her high-stress job as a marine biologist and the lingering heartache from a recent breakup. She was ready for a fresh start, and this island paradise seemed like the perfect place to find it. The beach was everything she had hoped for and more. Powdery white sand stretched as far as the eye could see, and the crystal-clear water sparkled in the sunlight. Sophie found a comfortable spot under a palm tree and laid out her towel. She spent the next hour soaking up the sun, feeling the tension in her shoulders gradually ease. "Time for a swim," she decided, standing up and stretching. The water was refreshingly cool as she waded in, and she let out a sigh of contentment. Floating on her back, she gazed up at the sky, marveling at the brilliance of the blue overhead. This was exactly what she needed. After her swim, Sophie strolled along the beach, taking in the sights and sounds of the island. She spotted a small beach bar up ahead and decided to treat herself to a cocktail. As she approached, she noticed a group of people gathered around a man who seemed to be giving a diving demonstration. Curious, she joined the crowd and watched as the instructor, a tall, muscular man with sun-bleached hair and a warm, easy smile, explained the basics of scuba diving. His enthusiasm was infectious, and Sophie found herself captivated by his energy. "Hi there. Interested in learning to dive?" he asked, catching her eye. Sophie smiled. "I've always wanted to try, but I've never had the chance." "Well, today's your lucky day. I'm Ryan, by the way," he said, extending his hand. "Sophie," she replied, shaking his hand. "Nice to meet you, Ryan." "Nice to meet you too, Sophie. How about we set you up with a beginner's lesson tomorrow? The underwater world here is something you don't want to miss." "That sounds amazing," Sophie said, feeling a spark of excitement. "Count me in." "Great. I'll see you at the dive shop at 9 a.m., Ryan said with a grin. "You're going to love it." As Sophie walked back to her spot on the beach, she couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. This vacation was already shaping up to be more than just an escape, it was an adventure. And with the promise of exploring the ocean depths, who knew what other surprises awaited her? Back in her room later that evening, Sophie couldn't stop thinking about Ryan. There was something about him that intrigued her. Maybe it was his easy confidence or the way he seemed so at home in this paradise. Whatever it was, she was looking forward to getting to know him better. She spent the rest of the evening relaxing on her balcony, enjoying a delicious dinner delivered by room service and watching the sun set over the ocean. The sky turned a brilliant shade of orange, and the gentle sound of the waves lulled her into a state of peaceful contentment. As the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, Sophie felt a renewed sense of hope. This island escape was more than just a break from her routine, it was a chance to rediscover herself and maybe, just maybe, find a new beginning. With that comforting thought, she slipped into bed, her heart light and her spirit ready for whatever the next day would bring. Little did she know, this tropical paradise had more in store for her than she could have ever imagined. 2. Beneath the surface. Sophie woke to the gentle sound of waves lapping against the shore and the golden light of dawn filtering through her curtains. She stretched luxuriously, feeling more rested and at ease than she had in months. Today was the day she would dive into the underwater world, guided by the enigmatic Ryan. After a quick breakfast at the resort's beachfront cafe, Sophie made her way to the dive shop. It was a cozy, inviting place, filled with shelves of diving gear, vibrant marine life posters, and the scent of salty sea air. Ryan was already there, sorting through equipment and chatting with a few early risers. "Good morning, Sophie," he greeted her with a warm smile. "Ready for your first dive?" "Absolutely," she replied, feeling a flutter of excitement. Ryan introduced her to the basics of scuba diving, explaining the equipment, hand signals, and safety procedures. His enthusiasm was contagious, and Sophie found herself hanging on his every word. She appreciated how thorough and patient he was, making sure she felt comfortable and confident before heading into the water. "All right, let's get suited up," Ryan said, handing her a wetsuit. Once they were geared up, Ryan led Sophie and a small group of other beginners to the edge of the pier where their dive boat was waiting. The boat ride to the dive site was exhilarating, the wind whipping through Sophie's hair and the sun shining brightly overhead. The sparkling water stretched out endlessly, and she felt a thrill of anticipation for what lay beneath the surface. "Here we are," Ryan announced as the boat anchored near a secluded reef. "This spot is perfect for beginners. The coral formations are stunning, and there's plenty of marine life to see." As they prepared to enter the water, Sophie's nerves kicked in. She took a deep breath, reminding herself of everything Ryan had taught her. She could do this. With one last reassuring smile from Ryan, she slipped into the water, the coolness enveloping her like a welcome embrace. Under the surface, the world transformed into a mesmerizing underwater paradise. Sophie was awestruck by the vibrant colors and the sheer variety of life around her. Schools of fish darted through the coral, their scales shimmering in the filtered sunlight. Graceful sea turtles glided by, and curious reef sharks swam in the distance. Ryan stayed close to her, guiding her through the underwater wonderland with practiced ease. He pointed out fascinating creatures and intricate coral structures, his passion for the ocean evident in every gesture. Sophie felt a deep sense of awe and gratitude for this incredible experience. As they swam deeper, the water became cooler and the light dimmer, creating an almost mystical atmosphere. Sophie was captivated by the serenity and beauty of this hidden world. She felt a profound connection to the ocean and a sense of peace that she hadn't experienced in a long time. After the dive, the group surfaced and returned to the boat, exhilarated and filled with a sense of accomplishment. Back on board, Sophie couldn't stop smiling, her heart racing with excitement. "How was it?" Ryan asked, his eyes twinkling. "It was amazing," Sophie replied, her voice filled with wonder. "I've never seen anything like it." "Thank you, Ryan. You did great," he said, his smile widening. "I knew you'd love it." As the boat headed back to shore, Sophie and Ryan chatted about the dive and their favorite marine life sightings. She was struck by how easy it was to talk to him, how natural their connection felt. There was an undeniable spark between them, one that seemed to grow stronger with each passing moment. Back at the resort, Sophie spent the afternoon relaxing by the pool, her mind replaying the incredible underwater scenes she had witnessed. She couldn't stop thinking about Ryan and the way he had made her feel so at ease. There was something about him that drew her in, making her want to know more. That evening, Sophie decided to join the group dinner at the resort's beachfront restaurant. As luck would have it, Ryan was there too, mingling with the guests and sharing stories of his diving adventures. When he saw her, his face lit up. "Sophie, come join us," he called, beckoning her over. She took a seat beside him, feeling a warm sense of belonging. The evening was filled with laughter, delicious food, and the sound of waves crashing gently in the background. Sophie felt more alive than she had in months, the weight of her past troubles lifting with each passing moment. As the night drew to a close, Ryan walked her back to her room, the moonlight casting a soft glow over the path. "Thank you for today, Ryan," Sophie said, her voice sincere. "It was unforgettable." "I'm glad you enjoyed it," he replied, his gaze steady and warm. "I hope it's the first of many adventures for you here." Sophie smiled, feeling a flutter in her chest. "I hope so too." As she closed the door behind her, Sophie couldn't help but feel that this island escape was turning into something much more profound. Beneath the surface of the ocean, and perhaps beneath the surface of her own heart, there were depths waiting to be explored. And with Ryan by her side, she was ready to dive in. 3. Stormy waters. The next few days were a blur of sun-drenched afternoons and exhilarating underwater adventures. Sophie and Ryan spent hours exploring the vibrant coral reefs and discovering hidden coves, their bond growing stronger with each dive. Sophie felt an increasing sense of freedom and happiness, something she hadn't experienced in years. One morning, as Sophie was enjoying a leisurely breakfast on her balcony, she noticed the sky darkening on the horizon. Thick, ominous clouds were rolling in, and the wind was starting to pick up. She watched as the palm trees swayed more violently, their fronds rustling loudly in the strengthening breeze. Her phone buzzed with a message from Ryan: "Storm approaching. Meet me at the dive shop. Need to secure everything." Sophie quickly changed into practical clothes and made her way to the dive shop. The atmosphere was tense as staff and guests hurried to prepare for the incoming storm. Ryan was already there, organizing gear and giving instructions to the team. "Hey, Sophie," he greeted her, his expression serious but calm. "We need to make sure all the equipment is safe. Can you help me with the tanks?" "Of course," Sophie replied, eager to be of assistance. They worked side by side, securing diving tanks, bringing in gear from the beach, and boarding up windows. The wind howled around them, and the first drops of rain began to fall, quickly escalating into a torrential downpour. "That's the last of it," Ryan said, wiping rain from his face. "We should head to the main building. It's the safest place during a storm like this." Sophie nodded, feeling a mix of excitement and anxiety. She followed Ryan to the resort's main building, where guests and staff had gathered to wait out the storm. The atmosphere was one of nervous anticipation, but Ryan's presence was reassuring. He exuded a quiet confidence that made Sophie feel safe. The storm raged on, the wind howling like a living creature and the rain pounding against the windows. The power flickered, then went out, plunging the room into darkness. Someone lit candles, casting a soft, flickering glow over the anxious faces. Ryan sat down beside Sophie, their shoulders touching. "You doing okay?" he asked, his voice gentle.
"Yeah,
"Just a bit nervous," she admitted, glancing out the window at the fury of the storm. "It'll pass," he assured her. "Storms like this blow over quickly. Just gotta ride it out." As the hours passed, Sophie and Ryan talked to pass the time. They shared stories from their lives, with Sophie opening up about her demanding job as a marine biologist and the recent breakup that had left her heart bruised. Ryan listened intently, his gaze never leaving her face. "Sounds like you've had a rough time," he said softly. "But you're stronger than you think, Sophie. Coming here, diving into new experiences, that takes guts." "Thanks, Ryan," she replied, feeling a warmth spread through her. "I guess I needed to hear that. And I needed to meet someone like you," he said, his eyes locking onto hers. "You've reminded me why I love what I do. Why this place is so special." Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden, violent gust of wind that rattled the windows. Sophie flinched, and Ryan instinctively put his arm around her, pulling her close. The gesture was protective, comforting, and Sophie felt her heart beat faster. They stayed like that, huddled together, as the storm continued to rage outside. There was something intimate about sharing this experience, something that made Sophie feel deeply connected to Ryan. She knew she was falling for him, and it scared her as much as it exhilarated her. Eventually, the storm began to subside, the wind and rain gradually lessening in intensity. The power flickered back on, and the guests and staff breathed a collective sigh of relief. Ryan stood up, offering Sophie his hand. "Let's check the damage," he said, helping her to her feet. Together, they ventured outside, surveying the aftermath of the storm. Debris littered the beach, and several trees had been uprooted, but the resort had weathered the worst of it. Ryan and Sophie worked alongside the staff to start the cleanup, their teamwork seamless and efficient. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the island, Sophie and Ryan took a moment to rest. They sat on the beach, watching the waves gently lap against the shore, the storm now a distant memory. "Thank you for today," Sophie said, leaning her head against Ryan's shoulder. "I don't know what I would have done without you." "You would have been just fine," he replied, his arm wrapping around her. "But I'm glad I could be here with you." Sophie looked up at him, her heart full. "Ryan, He silenced her with a gentle kiss, his lips soft and warm against hers. It was a kiss filled with promise and tenderness, a kiss that spoke of new beginnings and the hope of a shared future. When they finally pulled apart, Sophie felt a sense of peace and certainty she hadn't known in a long time. She knew that whatever storms lay ahead, she and Ryan would face them together, anchored in love and strengthened by the bond they had forged in the midst of the tempest. 4. Uncharted territory. The storm had passed, leaving behind a refreshed and sparkling island paradise. Sophie awoke the next morning to the sound of birds singing and the sight of sunlight streaming through her window. She felt a sense of renewed hope and excitement for what the day might bring. After breakfast, she met Ryan at the dive shop. There was a buzz of activity as the staff continued to clean up and prepare for the day's excursions. Ryan greeted her with a bright smile that made her heart flutter. "Ready for another adventure?" he asked, his eyes twinkling with excitement. "Absolutely," Sophie replied, matching his enthusiasm. "What's on the agenda today?" "I thought we'd explore a new dive site," Ryan said. "It's a bit off the beaten path, but I've heard great things about it." "You up for some uncharted territory?" "Definitely," Sophie said, feeling a thrill of anticipation. They gathered their gear and set off in a small boat, navigating along the coastline to the secluded dive site. The ride was exhilarating, with the wind whipping through their hair and the sea spray cooling their skin. As they approached the site, Sophie could see why Ryan was so excited. The water was a stunning shade of blue, and the coral formations below the surface were unlike anything she had seen before. Once they anchored, Ryan and Sophie donned their gear and slipped into the water. The underwater world here was even more magical than Sophie had imagined. The coral was vibrant and teeming with life, and the visibility was crystal clear. Schools of brightly colored fish darted around them, and a curious sea turtle swam by, checking them out before gliding away. Ryan guided her through the maze of coral, pointing out fascinating marine creatures and intricate coral formations. They communicated through hand signals, their movements synchronized as if they had been diving together for years. Sophie felt a deep sense of connection, not just to the underwater world, but to Ryan as well. After a while, they surfaced and swam back to the boat. They pulled themselves up, shedding their gear and sitting side by side, catching their breath. "That was incredible," Sophie said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "I've never seen anything like it." "I'm glad you enjoyed it," Ryan replied, his smile widening. "There's something about exploring uncharted territory that makes it even more special." Sophie nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. She felt like she was on a journey of discovery, not just of the ocean, but of herself and her feelings for Ryan. She knew she was falling for him, and the thought both exhilarated and terrified her. They spent the afternoon exploring the island, hiking through lush forests and discovering hidden waterfalls. Ryan led the way, his knowledge of the island's terrain impressive. Sophie found herself admiring his strength and confidence, and the way he seemed so at home in this wild, beautiful place. As they reached a secluded spot overlooking a cliff, Ryan turned to her, his expression serious. "Sophie, there's something I need to tell you." Her heart skipped a beat. "What is it?" "I've been wanting to share this with you for a while," he said, taking a deep breath. "The reason I came to St. Lucia, it's because I was running away from something." Sophie listened intently as Ryan opened up about his past. He had been a successful lawyer in New York City, but the pressure and the cutthroat environment had taken a toll on him. He had lost his passion for life, and a series of personal tragedies had pushed him to the brink. He had come to St. Lucia to find peace and to reconnect with himself. "But then I met you," Ryan said, his voice softening. "And you reminded me of what it feels like to truly live, to feel connected to someone. I've been so afraid to open up, but with you, it feels right." Sophie felt tears welling up in her eyes. "Ryan, I had no idea. I'm so glad you told me. I've been feeling the same way. This place, meeting you, it's changed me. I was running away too, from my own pain and fears." Ryan reached out and took her hand, his touch warm and reassuring. "Maybe we can stop running and face the future together." Sophie looked into his eyes, seeing the sincerity and hope there. "I'd like that," she whispered, her voice filled with emotion. They stood there, holding hands, as the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the landscape. It was a moment of profound connection and understanding, a promise of new beginnings and uncharted territories waiting to be explored. Back at the resort that evening, Sophie and Ryan shared a quiet dinner, their conversation flowing easily. They talked about their dreams, their fears, and their hopes for the future. Sophie felt a deep sense of contentment and a growing certainty that she had found something truly special with Ryan. As they walked along the beach under the starlit sky, Ryan pulled Sophie close, their footsteps leaving a trail in the sand. "I'm so glad I met you, Sophie," he said, his voice filled with tenderness. "You make me believe in second chances." "You make me believe in love," Sophie replied, her heart full. They kissed, a slow, lingering kiss that spoke of promises and possibilities. The waves gently lapped at their feet, and the world seemed to fade away, leaving only the two of them and the vast, open sky. In that moment, Sophie knew that she was exactly where she was meant to be, on the edge of uncharted territory, ready to face whatever the future held, as long as she had Ryan by her side. 5. Waves of emotion. The following days were a whirlwind of emotions for Sophie and Ryan. Their relationship deepened, growing stronger with each shared adventure and quiet moment together. Sophie felt like she was living in a dream, her heart full and her spirit buoyed by the love she had found. One afternoon, as they lounged on the beach, Ryan turned to her with a serious expression. "Sophie, there's something I need to talk to you about." Sophie sat up, her heart skipping a beat. "What is it, Ryan?" It's about my past, he said, looking out at the ocean. I've been avoiding it, but I think it's time I faced it. I need to go back to New York and tie up some loose ends. I can't move forward with you if I don't deal with it. Sophie's heart sank. The thought of Ryan leaving, even temporarily, filled her with dread. But she understood the importance of facing one's past. I understand, Ryan, she said softly. But what does that mean for us? Ryan took her hand, his eyes filled with determination. It means I need to go back and confront my past, but I want you to come with me. I don't want to lose what we have, Sophie. You're my anchor, and I need you by my side. Sophie felt a wave of relief and love wash over her. Of course, I'll go with you, she said, squeezing his hand. We'll face it together. A few days later, they boarded a plane to New York. Sophie was both excited and nervous about the trip. She had left behind her own troubles in the city, and returning felt like opening old wounds. But with Ryan by her side, she felt ready to face anything. The city was as bustling and overwhelming as Sophie remembered. They checked into a hotel and spent the first evening exploring the familiar streets. Ryan showed her his old haunts, sharing stories of his life before St. Lucia. The next day, they visited Ryan's former law firm. It was a stark contrast to the laid-back island life they had been living. Ryan met with his former colleagues and settled some unfinished business. Sophie watched as he faced his past with courage and integrity, feeling proud of the man he had become. As they walked out of the building, Ryan let out a deep breath. That wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Thank you for being here with me, Sophie. I wouldn't be anywhere else, she replied, her love for him growing stronger. That evening, they had dinner at a cozy little restaurant, talking about their future and their dreams. They both knew that this trip was more than just tying up loose ends, it was a step towards building a life together. The following morning, Ryan suggested they visit Central Park. The park was a sanctuary amidst the city's chaos, and they spent the day wandering its paths, enjoying the serenity. As they sat by the lake, Ryan took Sophie's hand. There's something else I need to tell you, he said, his voice tinged with vulnerability. Before I left New York, I was engaged. Her name was Emily. She died in a car accident. I never really dealt with it. Coming to St. Lucia was my way of running away. Sophie's heart ached for him. Ryan, I'm so sorry. I can't imagine how hard that must have been. It was, he admitted, his eyes filled with pain. But meeting you has helped me heal. I feel like I can finally move forward. Sophie hugged him tightly, her heart breaking for the pain he had endured. You don't have to face it alone, Ryan. I'm here for you, always. As they held each other, Sophie felt a wave of emotion wash over her. She realized that love was not just about the joy and the happiness, but also about facing the pain and the challenges together. She knew that their love was strong enough to withstand anything. Their time in New York was filled with moments of reflection and healing. They visited Emily's grave, paying their respects and finding closure. Sophie supported Ryan as he faced his past, and in turn, he helped her confront her own fears and insecurities. One evening, as they walked along the Hudson River, Ryan turned to Sophie, his eyes filled with love. I can't imagine my life without you, Sophie. You've brought light back into my world. Will you stay with me, no matter where life takes us? Tears filled Sophie's eyes. Yes, Ryan. I will. I love you. They kissed under the twilight sky, their hearts intertwined, and their future bright with the promise of new beginnings. Sophie knew that their journey was just beginning, and she was ready to face whatever waves of emotion lay ahead, as long as they were together. As they boarded the plane back to St. Lucia, Sophie felt a sense of peace and contentment. She and Ryan had faced their pasts and emerged stronger, their love unshaken. They were ready to build a future together, anchored in love and strengthened by the trials they had overcome. Back on the island, life resumed its tranquil rhythm. Sophie and Ryan continued to explore the underwater wonders and share their passion for the ocean. They knew that their love was like the sea, vast, deep, and capable of weathering any storm. In the quiet moments, as they sat on the beach watching the waves, Sophie felt a profound sense of gratitude. She had found love in the most unexpected place, and she knew that no matter what the future held, she and Ryan would face it together, their hearts forever entwined. 6. Anchored in love. The flight back to St. Lucia was filled with a quiet sense of triumph and relief. Sophie and Ryan had faced their pasts head-on, and now, they were ready to fully embrace their future together. As the island came into view, bathed in the golden light of the setting sun, Sophie felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. This island had given her more than just a vacation, it had given her a new beginning. Once they were back at the resort, life quickly fell into a comforting rhythm. Sophie and Ryan spent their days diving, exploring the vibrant marine life, and their evenings strolling along the beach or enjoying quiet dinners under the stars. Their love grew stronger with each passing day, their bond deepening with every shared experience. One evening, as they sat on the beach watching the sun dip below the horizon, Ryan turned to Sophie, his expression serious yet tender. "Sophie, there's something I've been wanting to ask you." Sophie felt her heart skip a beat. "What is it, Ryan?" He took her hands in his gaze steady and filled with love. "I've been thinking a lot about our future. About how much you mean to me and how I can't imagine my life without you. Sophie, will you marry me?" Tears filled Sophie's eyes as she looked at the man who had become her everything. "Yes, Ryan," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "Yes, I will marry you." Ryan pulled her into his arms, their hearts beating in sync as they kissed under the starlit sky. It was a moment of pure joy and love, a promise of a future filled with endless possibilities. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of excitement as they planned their wedding. They decided to keep it simple and intimate, inviting only their closest friends and family to join them on the island. The resort staff helped them arrange a beautiful beach ceremony, complete with tropical flowers and a gentle ocean breeze. On the day of the wedding, Sophie stood on the beach, her heart pounding with anticipation. She wore a simple white dress that flowed in the breeze, and her hair was adorned with delicate flowers. As she walked down the aisle, she saw Ryan waiting for her, looking handsome and deeply in love. The ceremony was perfect, filled with heartfelt vows and tearful smiles. As they exchanged rings, Sophie felt a profound sense of peace and joy. She knew that she and Ryan were meant to be together, their love anchored in the depths of their hearts. After the ceremony, they celebrated with their loved ones, dancing under the stars and savoring every moment. The night was filled with laughter, music, and the sound of the waves gently lapping against the shore. As the festivities wound down, Ryan took Sophie by the hand and led her to a quiet spot on the beach. They sat together, watching the moonlight reflect on the water. "Today was perfect," Sophie said, leaning her head against Ryan's shoulder. "It was," Ryan agreed, his arm around her. "And it's just the beginning, Sophie. I can't wait to spend the rest of my life with you." Sophie smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her. "Me too, Ryan. I love you." "I love you too," he replied, his voice filled with emotion. In the days that followed, Sophie and Ryan settled into their new life as a married couple. They continued to explore the island, finding new adventures and sharing their passion for the ocean. They knew that their love was like the sea, vast, deep, and ever-changing, capable of withstanding any storm. One afternoon, as they were diving near a secluded cove, Sophie spotted something glinting in the sand. She swam closer and realized it was an old, tarnished locket. She picked it up and showed it to Ryan. "Look at this," she said, her curiosity piqued. Ryan examined the locket, his eyes widening with interest. "It looks old. Let's see if we can open it." Back on the boat, they carefully pried open the locket, revealing a small, faded photograph inside. It was a picture of a young couple, their faces filled with joy and love. Sophie felt a shiver run down her spine. "I wonder who they were." Ryan nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Maybe it's a sign. A reminder of how love endures, even through the passage of time." Sophie smiled, feeling a deep connection to the locket and its story. "I think you're right." They decided to keep the locket as a symbol of their own enduring love. It became a cherished reminder of the journey they had taken together and the adventures that still lay ahead. As the weeks turned into months, Sophie and Ryan continued to build their life together, finding joy in the simple moments and strength in their love. They knew that life would bring its challenges, but they were ready to face them together, anchored in the love they had found on this beautiful island. One evening, as they watched the sun set over the ocean, Ryan turned to Sophie, his eyes filled with love. "Sophie, thank you for coming into my life. You've given me more than I ever thought possible." Sophie smiled, her heart full. "And you've given me the world, Ryan. I can't wait to see what the future holds for us." They kissed, their hearts and souls intertwined, knowing that their love was a force of nature, as powerful and enduring as the waves that crashed against the shore. Together, they were ready to face whatever came their way, anchored in love and bound by the unbreakable bond they had forged in the heart of paradise.